The coffee shop buzzed with the usual morning rush as Sarah Martinez adjusted her oversized sweater and pulled her baseball cap lower over her eyes. She preferred staying invisible in crowds, a habit formed from years of military training that never quite left her system. The barista called out her order, and she moved forward, accidentally bumping into a tall man in an expensive suit. "Watch where you're going," Marcus Thompson snapped, his voice sharp with irritation. Coffee had splashed onto his pristine white shirt, and his face flushed red with anger. At 35, Marcus had built his reputation as a ruthless corporate lawyer who never backed down from a fight, whether in the courtroom or on the street. Sarah immediately stepped back, raising her hands in a peaceful gesture. "I'm really sorry about that. Let me buy you another coffee and pay for the dry cleaning." Her voice remained calm and measured despite the man's aggressive posture. She had learned long ago that de-escalation was always the first option. Marcus studied her appearance with disdain. To him, she looked like just another nobody. Small frame, quiet demeanor, probably unemployed. "You think sorry fixes this? This shirt costs more than what you probably make in a month." His voice grew louder, drawing attention from other customers who began to stare at the unfolding confrontation. The barista approached nervously, offering napkins, but Marcus waved him away. "Don't you dare walk away from me when I'm talking to you," he said to Sarah, who had started to turn toward the exit. She paused, her jaw tightening slightly, though her expression remained neutral. "Sir, I've apologized and offered to make it right. There's nothing more I can do here," Sarah replied, her tone still respectful, but with an underlying firmness that Marcus failed to recognize. She had dealt with far more dangerous situations than an angry businessman having a tantrum over spilled coffee. Marcus felt his authority being challenged. In his world, people didn't walk away from him. Without thinking, his hand shot out and grabbed Sarah's arm roughly, spinning her around to face him. "Nobody disrespects me like this, especially not some homeless-looking girl who can't even afford decent clothes." The coffee shop fell silent. Sarah looked down at his hand gripping her arm, then back up at his face. Her eyes, which had been soft moments before, now held a steely quality that made Marcus unconsciously loosen his grip slightly. "You need to let go of my arm right now," she said quietly. But every word carried weight. Instead of releasing her, Marcus tightened his grip. "Or what? You'll call the police? Look around, everyone here saw you assault me first by throwing coffee on me." His arrogance blinded him to the change in Sarah's demeanor and the way she had subtly shifted her stance. Sarah took a deep breath, her military training screaming at her to act, but she maintained her composure. "This is your last warning. Remove your hand." The other customers began pulling out their phones, some already recording the confrontation that was escalating beyond a simple misunderstanding. Marcus laughed mockingly. "You're threatening me? Do you have any idea who I am? I could have you arrested for assault and harassment. Maybe a night in jail will teach you some respect." His grip remained firm on her arm as he reached for his phone with his free hand, intending to call the police and make good on his threat. The tension in the coffee shop was palpable. Sarah remained perfectly still, but those with keen eyes could see the subtle signs. The way her weight had shifted to the balls of her feet, how her free hand hung loose and ready at her side, the controlled breathing that spoke of someone who had been in far more dangerous situations than this. Marcus, oblivious to these warning signs, continued his verbal assault while maintaining his physical grip. He had no idea that he was about to learn a lesson that would change his perspective on assumptions, respect, and the consequences of underestimating someone based on their appearance. The moment of reckoning was approaching faster than he could possibly imagine. Marcus pulled out his phone and began dialing, still gripping Sarah's arm tightly. "Yes, I need police at Downtown Coffee on 5th Street. I'm being assaulted by a vagrant who threw coffee on me and is now threatening me." His voice carried the arrogant tone of someone accustomed to getting his way through intimidation and legal threats. Sarah's patience had reached its limit. Years of military discipline had taught her when words failed, action became necessary. In one fluid motion that happened so quickly that most witnesses later claimed they barely saw it, Sarah twisted her arm free from Marcus's grip while simultaneously stepping into his space. Her hand moved with surgical precision, striking a pressure point on his wrist that immediately caused his phone to clatter to the floor. Before Marcus could process what had happened, Sarah had maneuvered behind him and applied a controlled hold that immobilized him without causing permanent damage. Her forearm pressed against his throat with just enough pressure to get his attention, while her other hand secured his arm behind his back. The entire sequence took less than 3 seconds. "What the hell?" Marcus began to shout, but his words were cut short as Sarah applied slightly more pressure. The coffee shop erupted in gasps and excited murmurs as customers realized they were witnessing something far beyond an ordinary altercation. "Listen very carefully," Sarah said quietly, her mouth close to his ear. "I tried to handle this peacefully. I apologized, offered to pay for damages, and asked you multiple times to let me go. You chose to escalate this situation." Her voice remained calm, but there was an undeniable authority in it that made Marcus's blood run cold. Marcus struggled against her hold, but quickly realized that any movement he made only tightened her grip. Panic began to set in as he understood that this woman, who had appeared so weak and defenseless moments before, now had complete control over him. "Let me go right now or I'll sue you for everything you're worth." Sarah maintained her position, applying just enough pressure to keep him still without causing harm. "You grabbed me first. Every person in this coffee shop witnessed that. You threatened to have me arrested on false charges. You used your size and perceived position of power to intimidate someone you thought couldn't fight back." Her words were measured and precise, like a military briefing. The barista had moved to a safe distance and was frantically calling the real police, while customers continued recording the unprecedented scene. Some were already posting videos online with captions like, "You won't believe what happened at our local coffee shop," and "When keeping it real goes wrong." Marcus tried to look around at the crowd, hoping to find someone who would help him, but the expressions on people's faces ranged from shock to amusement. A few customers were even nodding approvingly at Sarah's actions, clearly feeling that Marcus had gotten what he deserved for his aggressive behavior. "You don't understand," Marcus gasped, still trying to assert his authority, even from his compromised position. "I'm Marcus Thompson. I'm a lawyer with Harrison Bradley and Associates. I have connections throughout this city. When I get out of this, you'll spend the next 10 years of your life in courtrooms." Sarah's grip didn't waver. "Your threats mean nothing to me. I've faced down enemies with real weapons in real combat situations. Do you think a lawyer's tantrum intimidates me?" Her words carried a weight that made several people in the coffee shop exchange glances, beginning to realize that this quiet woman might have a background none of them had expected. The sound of approaching sirens grew louder, and Marcus felt a mix of relief and apprehension. Relief that help was coming, but growing concern about how the situation might look to the responding officers. "When the police get here, you're finished," he said, though his voice lacked the conviction it had carried earlier. Sarah released the pressure slightly but maintained her position. "When the police arrive, we'll let them sort this out. But until then, you're going to stay exactly where you are and think about whether grabbing strangers and making threats is really how you want to spend your morning." Her tone suggested that she could maintain this position for as long as necessary, without any sign of strain or fatigue. The coffee shop had transformed from a peaceful morning routine into a stage for a confrontation that none of the witnesses would ever forget, and Marcus was beginning to realize that his assumptions about the woman he had grabbed might have been catastrophically wrong. The police sirens grew louder until 2 patrol cars pulled up outside the coffee shop. Officer Janet Rodriguez and her partner, Officer Mike Chen, entered the establishment, immediately assessing the unusual scene before them. A well-dressed businessman was being held in what appeared to be a professional restraint hold by a much smaller woman in casual clothes. "All right, everyone step back," Officer Rodriguez announced, her hand instinctively moving near her radio. "Ma'am, I need you to slowly release him and step away." Her tone was authoritative but not aggressive, recognizing that the situation required careful handling. Sarah immediately complied, smoothly releasing Marcus and taking several steps backward with her hands visible at her sides. "Yes, ma'am. The situation is under control." Her response was crisp and respectful, the kind of automatic deference to law enforcement that came from military training. Marcus stumbled forward, rubbing his wrist and straightening his suit jacket with shaking hands. "Officers, thank God you're here. This woman attacked me completely unprovoked. I want her arrested immediately for assault and battery, His voice was loud and demanding, but there was a shakiness to it that hadn't been there before. Officer Chen had been taking notes while observing both individuals. Something about the woman's posture and the way she had responded to police commands struck him as familiar. "Sir, we'll get your statement in a moment. Ma'am, can you tell us what happened here?" Before Sarah could respond, several customers began speaking at once, eager to share what they had witnessed. "He grabbed her first," shouted a college student near the window. She tried to walk away multiple times, but he wouldn't let her go. An elderly woman with her phone still recording added. The girl apologized and offered to pay for his shirt, but he kept getting more aggressive. She only defended herself after he grabbed her arm and wouldn't let go. Marcus's face flushed red as he realized the narrative wasn't going his way. "They're all lying. She threw coffee on me deliberately, and then attacked me when I tried to get her information for damages. Look at my shirt. This is evidence of her assault." Officer Rodriguez examined the coffee stain on Marcus's shirt, then looked at the spill pattern on the floor. Her years of experience had taught her to read the physical evidence of incidents. "This looks more like an accidental spill than a deliberate attack," she observed. "The splatter pattern suggests someone bumped into someone else, not an intentional throwing motion." Sarah remained quiet, allowing the officers to gather information from witnesses. She had learned that in situations involving law enforcement, it was often better to let others speak first and provide facts when asked directly. Her calm demeanor stood in stark contrast to Marcus's increasingly agitated state. Officer Chen had pulled up something on his tablet and was studying Sarah more carefully. "Ma'am, could you provide us with your identification, please?" His tone had shifted slightly, becoming more professional and less suspicious. Sarah reached slowly into her wallet and produced her driver's license and another card. "Here's my ID, officer, and this is my military identification." She handed both cards to Officer Chen, who examined them carefully before his eyes widened slightly in recognition. "Your active duty Navy?" Officer Chen asked, his entire demeanor changing as he read the information on her military ID. His partner moved closer to look at the cards as well, and both officers exchanged meaningful glances. Marcus, overhearing this exchange, laughed mockingly. "Navy? Oh, please, that's the best lie you could come up with. Look at her. She's barely 5 feet tall and looks like she hasn't seen the inside of a gym in years. There's no way she's military." Officer Rodriguez looked up from the ID cards with a serious expression. "Sir, I'm going to need you to lower your voice and let us handle this investigation." She turned back to Sarah with noticeably more respect. "Ma'am, what's your current assignment?" Sarah stood at a subtle position of attention. "I'm currently on leave, ma'am. I recently returned from a deployment overseas." She didn't elaborate further, understanding that operational details weren't for public discussion. The coffee shop had fallen quiet again as customers strained to hear the conversation. Marcus, however, was growing more frustrated by the minute as he sensed the officers' attention shifting away from his complaints and toward treating the woman he had dismissed as some kind of vagrant with increasing respect. "This is ridiculous," Marcus exploded. "Are you seriously going to believe this charade? Military ID cards can be faked. I'm telling you, this woman is dangerous and unstable. She used some kind of martial arts move on me that could have killed me." Officer Chen looked up from his notes with a slight smile. "Sir, if she had wanted to hurt you, trust me, you would know it. Based on what we're seeing here and the witness statements, it appears she showed remarkable restraint given the circumstances." Officer Rodriguez walked over to Sarah, holding the military ID with obvious respect. "Ma'am, according to this, you're not just Navy. You're Special Operations. Is that correct?" Her voice carried the reverence that law enforcement officers typically reserved for elite military personnel. Sarah nodded once, maintaining her professional composure. "Yes, ma'am. Navy SEAL, currently assigned to Naval Special Warfare Development Group." She spoke quietly, not wanting to make a public spectacle of her service, but understanding that the information was relevant to the situation. The coffee shop fell completely silent. Several customers who had been recording put their phones down, suddenly understanding they were in the presence of someone extraordinary. Even the barista stopped wiping down the counter to stare in amazement. Marcus's face went through a series of expressions: confusion, disbelief, and then slowly dawning horror as the implications hit him. "That's impossible," he whispered, but his voice lacked any conviction. "Women can't be Navy SEALs? That's not a real thing." Officer Chen shook his head with a mixture of amusement and disgust. Sir, women have been eligible for SEAL training since 2016, and you just grabbed and threatened one of the most elite warriors in the United States military. His tone made it clear what he thought of Marcus's ignorance and actions. Sarah maintained her position, but several people in the coffee shop could see the slight tension in her jaw. Having her service questioned and dismissed was something she had dealt with throughout her career, but it never got easier to hear, especially from someone who had just learned exactly how wrong his assumptions had been. Marcus stumbled backward, bumping into a chair as the full weight of his mistake hit him. But she was just standing there. She looked so normal. How was I supposed to know? His arrogance was crumbling rapidly, replaced by panic as he realized the magnitude of what he had done. Maybe by not grabbing strangers and making threats in the first place, Officer Rodriguez suggested dryly. Sir, based on witness statements and the evidence we've gathered, you initiated physical contact against someone who repeatedly tried to de-escalate the situation. The fact that she's a Navy SEAL actually makes her response even more restrained than we might have expected. The elderly woman who had been recording spoke up again. Officer, I got most of it on video. She tried to leave 3 different times and he kept stopping her. She warned him multiple times to let go before she did anything physical, and even then she didn't hurt him, just stopped him from hurting her. Marcus looked around the coffee shop desperately, seeing only faces that ranged from unsympathetic to openly hostile. The same people who might have supported him against a vagrant now looked at him with disgust for his treatment of a military hero. This is insane. I'm the victim here. She assaulted me. Sarah spoke for the first time since revealing her identity. Sir, I used minimal force necessary to remove myself from an unwanted physical restraint. My training taught me to neutralize threats while minimizing harm to all parties involved. You were never in any real danger from me. Her words carried a weight that made Marcus realize just how close he had come to discovering what a real threat from her might look like. The professional way she spoke about neutralizing threats sent chills down his spine as he began to understand the level of combat experience she likely possessed. Officer Chen closed his notebook and looked at Marcus seriously. Sir, we have multiple witness statements confirming that you initiated physical contact, made threats, and refused to release Ms. Martinez when she repeatedly asked you to do so. Given her military status and the restraint she showed, you should consider yourself fortunate this didn't escalate further. A young man near the counter called out, Hey, isn't this the guy from those law firm commercials? Marcus Thompson from Harrison, Bradley & Associates. Several people pulled out their phones and began searching, and soon there were murmurs of recognition throughout the coffee shop. Marcus's heart sank as he realized his public humiliation was about to extend far beyond this coffee shop. Please, he said quietly, his earlier aggression completely gone.
Can we handle this discreetly?
I have a reputation to maintain. Sarah looked at him with something approaching pity. Your reputation should have been your concern before you decided to grab a stranger in a public place. Actions have consequences. Mr. Thompson. The weight of those words settled over the coffee shop as Marcus began to understand that his assumption-filled morning was about to have lasting repercussions that extended far beyond a stained shirt. Officer Rodriguez finished taking statements from the witnesses, while Officer Chen reviewed the video footage that several customers had willingly provided. The evidence was overwhelming and consistent. Marcus had been the aggressor throughout the entire incident, while Sarah had shown remarkable patience and restraint. Mr. Thompson, Officer Rodriguez said, approaching Marcus, who now sat slumped in a chair. Based on the evidence and witness testimony, we have grounds to charge you with assault and battery, unlawful restraint, and harassment. Ms. Martinez, on the other hand, acted within her rights to defend herself from an unwanted physical attack. Marcus looked up with desperate eyes. Officers, please. I made a mistake. I was having a bad morning and I overreacted. Surely we can work something out. I'm willing to pay for any damages. Apologize publicly, whatever it takes. His voice had lost all traces of the commanding tone he had used earlier. Sarah watched this exchange with interest. In her military experience, she had seen how quickly aggressive people could change their tune when faced with real consequences. Officers, what are my options here? I don't necessarily want to press charges if Mr. Thompson is willing to learn from this experience. Officer Chen looked surprised. Ma'am, you have every right to press full charges. Given his behavior and the public nature of this incident, the district attorney would likely pursue this case aggressively, especially considering your service record. The coffee shop customers were watching this unfold with fascination. Many had expected the Navy SEAL to demand maximum punishment for Marcus's behavior, but her willingness to consider alternatives showed a level of maturity and wisdom that impressed even the skeptical observers. Marcus jumped at this potential lifeline. Yes, absolutely. I'll do whatever you think is appropriate. I clearly misjudged the situation and made terrible assumptions. I'm willing to make this right in whatever way you see fit. His desperation was evident, but there seemed to be genuine remorse beginning to show through his panic. Sarah studied Marcus carefully, her trained eye assessing whether his change in attitude was genuine or simply motivated by fear of consequences. Mr. Thompson, do you understand why your behavior was problematic beyond just the legal implications? Marcus nodded eagerly. I made assumptions about you based on your appearance. I thought I could intimidate you because I assumed you were powerless. I was wrong on every level, and not just because of your military background. I was wrong to treat anyone that way, regardless of who they are. Officer Rodriguez made notes while listening to this exchange. Ms. Martinez, if you're willing to consider alternatives to pressing charges, we could arrange for community service, anger management counseling, and a public apology. But I want to be clear, this is entirely your decision. Sarah nodded thoughtfully. Mr. Thompson, I want you to understand something. The issue isn't that you grabbed a Navy SEAL. The issue is that you grabbed a person. My military training doesn't make me more valuable than anyone else in this coffee shop. If you had done this to that college student over there, or that elderly woman, it would have been just as wrong. The wisdom in her words resonated throughout the coffee shop. Several people exchanged glances, recognizing the profound truth in what she was saying. Marcus sat quietly, absorbing this lesson that cut much deeper than simple legal consequences. I understand, Marcus said quietly. You're right. I need to examine not just my assumptions about you, but my assumptions about everyone. My behavior today was inexcusable regardless of who you turned out to be. Sarah looked at the officers. I'm willing to forego pressing charges if Mr. Thompson completes community service with a veterans organization, attends counseling to address his aggressive behavior, and makes a public apology that focuses on treating all people with respect. Not just about misjudging my background. Officer Chen smiled approvingly. That sounds like a fair resolution that serves the community interest. Mr. Thompson, are you willing to agree to these terms? Marcus nodded emphatically. Yes, absolutely. And I want to add something to that. I'd like to make a significant donation to a veterans charity of Ms. Martinez's choosing. It's the least I can do. The atmosphere in the coffee shop had shifted dramatically. What had begun as an ugly confrontation was transforming into a moment of genuine learning and growth, guided by the wisdom and restraint of someone who had every right to seek maximum punishment, but chose a path that might actually create positive change. Sarah extended her hand to Marcus. Mr. Thompson, I hope this experience helps you become a better person. We all make mistakes. What matters is what we learn from them. Marcus shook her hand gratefully, still amazed by the grace being shown to him by someone he had so badly misjudged and mistreated. 3 months later, Marcus Thompson stood nervously outside the community center where he had been volunteering every weekend since the coffee shop incident. Today was different. Sarah Martinez had agreed to meet him here to see how his community service was progressing. The time had given him perspective on just how dramatically that morning had changed his life. His law practice had initially suffered when videos of the confrontation went viral, with the hashtag #CoffeeShopKarma trending for weeks. Several clients had dropped him, and his partners at Harrison, Bradley & Associates had been forced to have serious conversations about his future with the firm. But something unexpected had happened. As he publicly acknowledged his mistakes and began his community service, a different narrative emerged. Marcus had thrown himself into working with the local veterans organization, initially as part of his agreement with Sarah, but increasingly because he found meaning in the work. He had started by simply sorting donations and helping with paperwork, but gradually became involved in helping veterans navigate legal challenges related to benefits, housing, and employment. Sarah arrived precisely on time, wearing jeans and a simple t-shirt that read, Team Red, White, and Blue. She moved through the parking lot with the same quiet confidence Marcus remembered from that morning. But now he recognized it for what it was: the bearing of someone who had earned their confidence through genuine achievement and service. "Mr. Thompson," she greeted him with a polite nod. "How are you finding the volunteer work?" Marcus gestured toward the building where he could see several veterans he had been working with. "It's been eye-opening, to say the least. I've learned more about real challenges and real courage in the past 3 months than I had in years of corporate law." His voice carried a sincerity that hadn't been there during their first encounter. Inside the community center, Sarah observed as Marcus interacted with the veterans he had been helping. She watched him carefully listen to an older Vietnam veteran explaining his benefits appeal, saw him patiently help a young female Marine navigate housing assistance paperwork, and noticed how he had learned to show genuine respect for their service without the patronizing attitude many civilians displayed. "He's actually been pretty helpful," said Tom Rodriguez, a Navy veteran who had lost his leg in Afghanistan. "When he first showed up, we all figured he was just some rich guy doing court-ordered community service. But he stuck with it, and he actually seems to care about getting results for people." Sarah nodded, impressed despite herself. She had seen many people promise to change after facing consequences, but few followed through when the spotlight moved away. Marcus appeared to be genuinely different from the man who had grabbed her arm in a coffee shop. During a break in the day's activities, Marcus and Sarah stepped outside to talk privately. "I owe you more than an apology," Marcus began. "That morning changed everything for me, not just because of who you turned out to be, but because of how you handled it. You could have destroyed my life, and you chose to give me a chance to become better instead." Sarah listened thoughtfully. "Mr. Thompson, the goal was never to destroy you. Military training teaches us that the objective is to neutralize threats and create better outcomes, not to cause maximum damage. You weren't really a threat. You were just someone who had lost sight of basic human decency." Marcus nodded, understanding the distinction. "I've been thinking a lot about that day and about the assumptions I made. Not just about you, but about everyone I encounter. I realized I had been living in a bubble where I thought success meant having power over other people, instead of using whatever privilege I have to help others." "What changed your mind?" Sarah asked, genuinely curious about his transformation. "Honestly, working with the veterans here, hearing their stories, seeing real courage and sacrifice, understanding what actual strength looks like. I spent years thinking I was important because I could intimidate people in courtrooms or boardrooms. These people faced real enemies with real weapons and came home to fight new battles with bureaucracy and indifference. It put my problems in perspective." Sarah smiled slightly. "It sounds like you've learned the lesson I was hoping you would, that everyone deserves respect regardless of their appearance, background, or perceived status. The uniform doesn't make the person's actions and character do." Marcus looked back at the community center where veterans were gathering for an afternoon workshop he had helped organize. "I want to keep doing this work, even after my community service requirement is completed. I've talked to my law firm about taking on more pro bono cases for veterans, and I'm considering starting a legal clinic specifically for military families. That would be a positive use of your skills and resources." Sarah acknowledged. "You have knowledge and connections that could make a real difference for people who need advocacy." As they prepared to part ways, Marcus had one final question. "Can I ask you something? Why didn't you fight back harder that day? I know now that you could have ended that confrontation in seconds if you had wanted to." Sarah considered the question carefully, because the strongest response isn't always the most forceful one. Real strength is knowing when to use your power and when to show restraint. You needed to learn a lesson, not end up in a hospital. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is give someone the chance to choose a better path. 1 year after the coffee shop incident, Marcus Thompson stood at a podium in the same community center where he had been volunteering, addressing a packed room of veterans, community leaders, and local media. The transformation in his life had been so complete that many people who knew his story still found it hard to believe this was the same man from the viral video. "When I started the Thompson Legal Clinic for Veterans," Marcus began, his voice steady and confident in a way that was earned rather than assumed, "I thought I was doing it to make amends for my past behavior. What I discovered was that this work has given my life more meaning than anything I had accomplished in my previous career." In the audience, Sarah Martinez sat quietly in the back row. having been personally invited by Marcus but preferring to avoid the spotlight. She wore her dress uniform for the occasion, attending the clinic's first anniversary celebration, not as the woman who had taught Marcus a lesson, but as someone who had become an unexpected ally in his mission to serve veterans. Over the past year, the Thompson Legal Clinic had helped more than 200 veterans with various legal challenges. From benefits appeals to housing disputes to employment discrimination cases, Marcus had leveraged his connections and legal expertise to create a network of volunteer attorneys willing to take on veterans' cases pro bono, turning his professional reputation from liability into an asset for good. "I want to share something with you," Marcus continued, "about the day that changed my perspective forever. Many of you have seen the video, but what you might not know is that the person I wronged that day became the inspiration for everything we've accomplished here." Sarah shifted uncomfortably as Marcus gestured toward her section of the audience. She had specifically asked him not to make a spectacle of her attendance, but she understood that her story was part of his story now, and that sharing it might help others. "Sarah Martinez is here with us today," Marcus said, "and while I cannot undo my actions that morning, I can honor the grace she showed me by continuing to build something positive from that moment of failure. She taught me that real strength comes from lifting others up, not putting them down." The audience applauded, and several veterans who had worked with both Marcus and Sarah over the past year stood to show their appreciation. Tom Rodriguez, the Navy veteran who had initially been skeptical of Marcus's commitment, was now one of the clinic's most vocal supporters. After the ceremony, Sarah approached Marcus as he was speaking with potential donors and volunteers. "Congratulations on the clinic's success," she said simply. "You've helped a lot of people who really needed it." Marcus looked around the room at the veterans, volunteers, and community members who had gathered to support the clinic. "I keep thinking about what you said that day about everyone deserving respect regardless of their background. This room is full of proof of that principle. People from every walk of life working together to solve real problems." Sarah nodded approvingly. "The military taught me that diversity of experience and perspective makes every team stronger. You've built something here that reflects that understanding." A young Marine veteran approached them, eager to share her story. "Mr. Thompson, I wanted to thank you again for helping me with my benefits appeal. The VA finally approved my claim and I'm starting college next month." Her face glowed with excitement about her future prospects. Marcus smiled genuinely. "That's what makes all of this worthwhile. Congratulations on your acceptance to college. You've earned every opportunity coming your way." As the evening wound down, Marcus and Sarah found themselves outside the community center, much as they had 3 months after their first encounter. The difference now was that they had become collaborators in a mission that extended far beyond their original confrontation. "I have something to tell you," Marcus said. "The law firm has made the Veterans Clinic a permanent part of our practice. We're dedicating 20% of our resources to pro bono veterans cases going forward. It's become one of our most successful initiatives, both in terms of community impact and business development." Sarah smiled. "That's excellent news. It sounds like you found a way to align your professional success with your personal values. That's not something everyone manages to achieve." Marcus looked back at the community center, where volunteers were cleaning up from the celebration. "I've been thinking about expanding the program to help other groups who face discrimination or assumption-based prejudice. Maybe working with formerly incarcerated individuals or immigrants, or anyone who gets judged by their appearance rather than their character. That sounds like a natural evolution of what you've learned." Sarah agreed. "The principles are the same. Treat people with dignity, listen to their stories, and use your skills to level the playing field when you can." As they prepared to go their separate ways, Marcus had one final reflection to share. "I know this might sound strange, but I'm grateful for what happened that day. Not because I enjoyed being humiliated or because I think I deserved to be taught a lesson that way, but because it forced me to confront who I had become and choose who I wanted to be instead." Sarah extended her hand for a final handshake. "Mr. Thompson, that day you learned that assumptions can be dangerous. But more importantly, you learned that it's never too late to choose a better path. The veterans you've helped, the volunteers you've inspired, the community you've built, that's the real measure of who you've become." As they parted ways, both carrying forward the lessons of that unexpected morning in a coffee shop, the ripple effects of their encounter continued to spread through their community, touching lives in ways neither of them would ever fully know, but both could take pride in having started.